Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. We believe that God's Word has the power to change lives. So grab a pen and paper and get ready for this message.
Well, I've entitled the message today, "The Forecast is Cloudy with a Chance of Death." Bum, 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 bum. What could go wrong? So I sent that to the staff earlier this week, and they was like, ugh, sounds like a message of hope. So it is my hope that I will be able to somehow make that make sense throughout the morning. If not, we'll just keep rolling. So speaking of the forecast and the weather, I often dread this time of year because at work, there's really two categories of you people. There's people that pay way too much attention to the forecast because how often is it wrong or a little off? And if they say, hey, we've got a half an inch of snow coming, then you've got to go 2 states away to get milk and bread from Walmart. You can literally get trampled, elbowed by a little old lady there trying to get your groceries. And then the other category are people that pay literally no attention to the forecast. And you drive around with may pop tires, that's tires that may pop at any time, in all kinds of snow and ice, and then you call me out there and I wreck 3 times trying to get to the ditch that both of us are going to be stuck in eventually. So sometimes people don't pay enough attention to the forecast, but when we talk about the forecast, we're talking about a prediction or an estimate of future events. It's an educated guess, and sometimes that's all it is, but we choose to live our lives, just trusting in the forecast about something that may or may not actually happen. Sometimes when God has called us to live a life of faith, it can hinder our ability to move forward in the kingdom, for the kingdom, if we just want to stay in the safe lane all the time because we're worried about what may go wrong or what may not go right. And when I was thinking about this, living your life according to the forecast, I was thinking about, normally I tell a police story, and I think that you guys are probably tired of those. So today I'm going to, well, I already decided. So today I'm going to tell a love story, right? Okay, once upon a time, there was a beautiful girl named Tabitha from Wyoming County, right? And then there was a handsome young police officer from the magical kingdom of Coal City. Yes. And anyway, those two met, fell in love, but she was working at the mall. She was working at American Eagle, and I knew, that she was out there, so I decided to go out there and just see her. I made a reason to go out there and wave at her, and look, here's the scene. She was at American Eagle looking beautiful, and she was standing beside a guy that looked like a contestant on The Bachelor. He had washboard abs and pretty hair. And I went in there and I waved at her like this, and then she gave me the I don't know this guy look. She was like, excuse me? And I immediately left, and I was like, dude, she's pretty, but she ain't that pretty. So give me the cold shoulder like that, I'm done. So I was ready to hit the old ripcord on everything that God had planned for my life. And then, anyway, I was creeping on her face page a little bit back when I had the socials that you millennials talk about. And she said, her status was like, oh, man, enjoying the hot tub after a long day of work. And I was like, can't afford you, princess. If your life is, if you're accustomed to things like hot tubs and you're looking at the wrong guy right here. So again, I didn't think long-term there was going to be any which way that I was going to be able to keep old girl. So I just decided to give up right there. So we started dating because she was super persistent, and she pursued me, and I tried to break up with her 1 or 2 or 20 times. And I know you guys don't believe that, but I mean, honestly, and I'm not fishing for a compliment. I'm not saying, oh, no, she is too good for me. I outkicked my coverage in every single way. So she tried to, I believe that God had spoken to her, that we were supposed to get married, and I just thought, I was sure that long term, I was not going to be able to keep her. I was like, she's too good for me, she's too pretty, she's too nice, she's too all of these things. I better so I don't get one more fatal blow to the old self-esteem here, I better go ahead and break up with her. So I tried and tried and tried. One time, I told her I was going to be a little bit late coming in from work, and she sent me the letter K. And I was like, man, I ain't even worth 2 letters. She can't even muster up an O for you, boy. So I was like, I'm just telling you. So I was like, look, this is not working out. You know, all you can say to me is K. And she was like, this guy is crazy, but I think that I'm supposed to marry him. So I tried to break up with her over and over again, and I wish that I was lying, but I'm not. And she's like, man, he was crazy. But I'm telling you, based upon what I figured would happen, what may happen, or what may not happen, I tried my hardest to wiggle out of the best thing that God has given me. He's given me a partner in faith that I wake up for work every day and she's in the Word and she's journaling and she believes in me and she speaks life over me and our children. No matter what the circumstance or scenario is, she has been there. She is part of God's blessing and calling on my life. We are connected. And because I thought that it might not work out, I tried to get out of it several times. And I am so thankful that God pushed past all of my stubbornness and my fear, and I was able to marry up, way, way, way up. But I'm telling you guys, when we get too concerned with the forecast, when we watch the weather, and we try to figure out what's going to happen, a lot of times we'll miss God's call for our life. See, Jesus even said in red letters, so don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. So don't worry about the weather. Don't watch the forecast so slowly that it cripples your ability to make an impact in the world around you. Don't be so consumed with the maybe or the might that you don't live your life in a way that glorifies me every single day. So tomorrow's got its own worries. Focus on today. Don't worry about the forecast. When we talk about watching the forecast in our life and watching the weather, what does that mean? It can be overwhelming to the point that it keeps us from living a life full of faith. What's my future look like? Long term, is my family going to be okay financially? Are my kids going to get into college? Are they going to marry someone that loves the Lord? Are they going to love the Lord? My head hurts. It's a tumor. It's not a tumor. Not a tumor. If you want a child of the 90s, you're not going to get that. So, or the 80s. So, we can worry about things. What do you mean layoffs? What do you mean the scan said something was irregular, abnormal? We can look at things. We can look at the maybes. There's a chance that this will happen. We can look at a prediction, and that's what it is. It's a prediction. Sometimes an educated guess, but it's a guess of what could possibly happen, and it will cause us to slow down. It will cause us to stay safe. And a lot of times I was thinking, when we try to interpret the forecast, when we try to figure out what's going to happen, it even gets worse when life gets crazy. And when we get tired, when we start looking at things, it distorts our ability to process incoming information. When things are moving around beside of us, a lot of times it looks a little darker than it is, and we think that it's going to end up a little worse than what we're prepared for. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about a kid that I'd met a few months ago during the Boy Scout Jamboree. There was like 100,000 little rascals over here in Mount Hope, and I was detailed to the Boy Scout Jamboree for a few days, and I went to get me a sandwich at the Subway in Glen Jean there. And this Subway, I think that they said that they did more business in like the 2-week period that the Boy Scouts were here than they did in any other like 4 months of the year. And there was like a young 16-year-old kid that was working there, and I saw it in his eyes. He was overwhelmed. He was exhausted. He was not processing incoming information. And I was just blessed to be there and to witness what happened, because a guy stepped up and was like, okay, I want 2 footlongs. And the kid looked back and he was like, sir, we only make 1 footlongs. So he just wasn't getting it. I was like, this is pure gold right here. I made a little note in my phone. I said, the next time I get to talk to the church, I'm going to find a way to fit this in any message. So, again, he was overwhelmed, and it affected his ability to process incoming information. And a lot of times when we're trying to read the forecast for our life, we're trying to figure out what's going to happen next week or next month or next year or how this is going to turn out or work out or how we're going to have enough. A lot of times when life gets crazy, we don't process it the right way. And I feel like I ran across a great story in my quiet time that we could learn a lot from, and it's the story of King Hezekiah in 2 Kings chapter 18. I want to start off with this verse 5. Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before or after his time. Man, how would you like to be known that way? Whether it's an employee or a dad, or whether it's a friend, how would you like to be known as someone that trusts in the Lord with all of their heart? And there's never been anyone before you or after you that is connected to God the way that you are. How would you like to be known the way that Hezekiah was known? He remained faithful to the Lord in everything and carefully obeyed all the commands the Lord had given Moses. So the Lord was with him, and Hezekiah was successful in everything he did. So he loves God. He's faithful to God. He trusts him. And he does things in a way that honors God more than anyone before him and anyone that came after him. But this is what happened. The Assyrian king began mounting an army to attack Judah. And I'm telling you something, the odds were overwhelming. They were insurmountable. He put together an army and started advancing on Judah that there was no possible way that Judah could be victorious. So he sends some threats. He's like, look, I'm fitting to smoke everybody up in here. So he said, look, it's going to be bad. And when he is communicating these threats to some of the king's staff's like, look here, man, speak to us in Aramaic. You're scaring the kids. There's people on the walls of the city that can hear you. And this is what the chief of the Assyrian king's staff said. He was like, no, look, they need to hear this. We're going to smoke you and you and you, and it's going to be so bad that you're going to eat your own doo-doo. I don't know why he needed to throw that in, but he did. He was like, you're going to drink your own pee, and you're going to eat your own doo-doo. 2 Kings 18:27 says, but Sennacherib or Sherburgerberg, look, I'm a state trooper. But Sennacherib, chief of staff, replied, do you think my master sent this message only to you and your master? He wants all the people to hear it. For when we put this city under siege, they will suffer along with you. They will be so hungry and thirsty that they will eat their own dung and drink their own urine. Look at your neighbor and say, blech. Then the chief of staff stood and shouted in Hebrew to the people on the wall, listen to this message from the great king of Assyria. This is what the king says, don't let Hezekiah deceive you. He will never be able to rescue you from my power. Don't let him fool you into trusting in the Lord by saying, the Lord will surely rescue us. This city will never fall into the hands of an Assyrian king. Don't listen to Hezekiah. These are the terms of the king of Assyria that he is offering. Make peace with me. Open the gates and come out. Then each of you can continue eating from your own grapevine and fig tree and drinking from your own well. Then I will arrange to take you to another land like this one, a land of grain and new wine, bread, vineyards, olive groves, and honey. Choose life instead of death. So it's super intimidating. It's overwhelming. The forecast is bloody with a chance of death. See how I tied that together there? Hopefully it makes sense now. So the outlook is really, really bad at this point. So he's even offering some of the people compromise and an easy way out. He's trying to create some division. It looks so bad, overwhelming. So first, this is what the king does. He sends word to Isaiah the prophet, and he responds with good news, and it looks up for just a minute, and then they get a weather update from the Assyrian king. This is what he does, 2 Kings 19:10. This message is for King Hezekiah of Judah. Don't let your God, in whom you trust, deceive you with promises that Jerusalem will not be captured by the king of Assyria. You know perfectly well what the kings of Assyria have done wherever they have gone. They have completely destroyed everyone who stood in their way. Why should you be any different? have the other gods of other nations rescued them, such nations as Gozan, Haran, Rezeph, and the people of Eden who were at Telassar. My predecessors destroyed them all. What happened to the king of Hamath and the king of Arpad? What happened to the kings of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Eva? So he's like, look, it's going to be bad. I'm telling you, don't let your God deceive you. I'm coming. And what has happened? Look at my track record. Look at all these other countries and look at what happened. And then here's where it gets good. 2 Kings 19:14. After Hezekiah received the letter from the messengers and read it, he went up to the Lord's temple and spread it out before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed this prayer before the Lord. O Lord God of Israel, you are enthroned between the mighty cherubim. You alone are God of all the kingdoms of the earth. You alone created the heavens and the earth. Bend down, O Lord, and listen. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see. Listen to Sennacherib's words of defiance against the living God. It is true, Lord, that the kings of Assyria have destroyed all these nations, and they have thrown the gods of these nations into the fire and burned them. But of course the Assyrians could destroy them. They were not gods at all, only idols of wood and stone shaped by human hands. Now, O Lord, our God, rescue us from his power. Then all the kingdoms of the earth will know that you alone, O Lord, are God. See, he took the threat. He took the forecast that wasn't only a possibility, but a probability. And he took it into the presence of God. He spread it out, and he reminded himself and God of who God was. This is who you are. This is who you've always been. You've never left me. You've always shown up right when I needed you the most. You are God, and you can save us. So he took it. He didn't stop. He didn't start a Facebook prayer chain. He didn't go and get anyone else's opinion. He took it to God, and he spread it out before the King of Kings. That's what we have to do in our lives with the what may happen and the what might happen scenarios. We have to take them to God, and we have to trust him. I think there's a few practical takeaways that we can take from this message, and the first thing is this: stay close and tune in. I was talking to Pastor Melody earlier in the week about this message, and she said it's like you have to tune into heaven's Doppler radar. See, if you're close to God, and he can change your perspective, and he can allow you to see things the way that he does. And the reason that King Hezekiah could go to God when it mattered the most is because that he was already close. Remember what I told you in chapter 18, verse 5. It says, no one before him and no one after him. He trusted in God with all of his heart, and he lived a life that pleased and honored God. See, when we live this way, through everyday relationship with our Father, the relationship that we were designed to be in, it can change our prayer. You've seen people in their moment of desperation, that they live a life at a distance from God, and when things get worse and there's nowhere else to turn, they say, God, if you're real, God, if you hear me, I need you. It can change our prayer from that to, God, I know you're real. God, you are the God that hears me. God, you've been there every second of every day. This is who you have been in my life. This is who you will continue to be. If you stay close and if you're tuned in, we have to stay that way. We have to be near to him. He can allow us to know exactly what is coming our way. He can give us peace when we need it the most. I thought about this scripture, Matthew 24:6 says, and you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Some translations say wars and rumors of war. How would you like to be able to differentiate between the two? Sometimes I think God he has the ability to look at you and say, hey, that's not real. That's a lie of the enemy. I don't care what the test result says. I don't care what they're saying at work. It doesn't matter. That's a rumor of war. I got this. I'm going to bring victory before you get out of the bed. Just because you're mine, I'm going to take care of this. He has the ability to do so. And then sometimes it may actually be war. Sometimes he's going to look at you and say, hey, everything in your story to this point has prepared you for this moment. I've trained your hands, Every struggle, every bit of adversity that you've encountered has been developing you, has been molding you to be victorious. You are ready, and I'm right beside you. Sometimes it's not a lie, sometimes it's happening, but you're ready. If you're tuned in to the right forecast, you're going to know whether it's a war or a rumor of war. He can give you the ability to tell the difference. The next thing is this. You have to take it to God immediately. He didn't hesitate. He went straight into the presence of God. He spread the king's threat out in front of God. And he said, God, this is who you are. We have to make it a practice of hitting our knees first. I think it's interesting. Every now and then I'll take something to Pastor Brandon, like a decision that I'm going to make, direction for my life, like what I need to do, and I trust his counsel. And without a doubt, his first question is always, have you prayed about it? See, he wants me to value the voice of God more than even his own. So his first question is, have you taken it to God? Have you prayed about it? Have you asked God? And a lot of times, guys, it's scriptural, it's biblical to take things to spiritual authority. You should value their opinion, you should value their counsel, but you have to make a practice of going to God first. It's because of Jesus and what he did. He tore the veil, and we can have that type of access. We can have that close, intimate, one-on-one communication with God. We have to make it a practice of going to him first. Take it to God immediately, and we allow God to speak into our lives over that situation. I was thinking about the ways that we determine the forecast, the ways that we make our best educated guess. And a lot of times it has to do with looking at your past experience, gathering all the variables you can. Even I'm assuming when they predict the weather, they're going to say, well, when the pressure and the humidity has been this, and there's been this type of cloud systems coming in, and we're 76% sure that it's going to rain. They look at the past, they look at experience, they compile all the data and statistics, and they make the best, most educated guess that they can. So a lot of times when we experience things in our life, we look at our past, we gather the data, we look and we make our best guess, and I think that the enemy is great into speaking here. Maybe you were at a rise. Maybe you felt like you had an encounter with God and he spoke something incredible to you. Maybe he said, hey, I'm going to bring freedom in this area. Maybe you've experienced God here on a Sunday and said, man, I'm going to leave changed. I will never be the same. I'm not going back to that old pattern of sin, that bitterness. Maybe you've experienced these things and then you made it all the way until Tuesday. And the enemy has said, oh, no, that's not the first time you were at that altar. That's not the first time that you've asked God about this. See, I've got the statistics, the data, even like a little pie chart and a laser pointer. Statistics show you fail. Data would suggest that every single time you fail. So when we receive that threat of the enemy, when we receive that whisper in our ear that, hey, I've looked at it and experience shows that you are not truly going to be free, that you are not truly a new person, you are not a new creation, you are the exact same person that has failed time and time again. When we hear that on Tuesday, we take it immediately into the presence of God. We spread it out before him and say, God, this is who you are. You are the God of creation. You are the God that has saved me, and you will save me again. We take it to God immediately. Not to Facebook, not to our friends. We take it to God. We spread it out before him because it doesn't matter what our past says. Statistics show that when you're dead for 4 days, you stay that way. But God says something completely different. So when we make it a practice of trying to determine the weather based upon our forecast in our experience, in the best way that we know how, we forget to go to the God that can tell the sun to stand still. And the God that absolutely controls the weather. So we stay close, we tune in, and we take it to God immediately. And the third thing is this: we allow God to move. I want to tell you guys, again, the opposition that King Hezekiah faced was overwhelming. There was no natural way, even in the threat. He said, I'll give you 2,000 horses if you can find enough people to ride it. You're not going to live. You shall surely die. He took that to God, and then he trusted him. God moved and brought overwhelming victory. 185,000 soldiers killed in the night. Again, King Hezekiah didn't have to do anything. He just trusted in God, and God moved. And I use the word allow because sometimes it's just like we can't sit still. So we try to stay close, we try to tune in. We're worried about what may happen next week, and it causes us to act, to get out of God's will and to try to make things happen on our own, to try to have that conversation, do that thing, move on our own behalf because we just can't sit still and let God be God. We have to trust him and allow him to move. Worried about the forecast or worried about the weather. What if it rains? What if it doesn't? What if I commit to this? What if I step out into this and things go wrong? I'm ready to stand out. I'm ready to represent Christ at work, but then what if I eat lunch by myself? I'm here to tell you, I don't get invited to normal weekend barbecues at work, and I'm okay with that. And if you don't want to eat lunch with me, I'm okay with that too. What if everything goes wrong? I can't control it. I can't control the forecast. Guys, it can be crippling if we worry ourselves to death trying to make things happen and instead of allowing God to be who he is. Tab and I, we pray before I go to work every day, and I ask God specifically for opportunities to live by faith. God, send me a chance to where I can't do anything on my own and I have to lean into your grace and all that you are. God, I need an opportunity to live by faith today. I can't control the things that are going on in my life. I just need you. I want to trust you and allow God to move. See, last week I was at a Rise, and I met a young lady that I hadn't seen in like a decade. She was 6, 7 years old when I met her, and she was so excited to be at the conference. She said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I said, "Yes, I do. How are you?" And she said, "Oh, I'm so good. This conference is amazing. I'm so happy to be here. God is incredible." And then I looked at her mom, and I saw the weight on her face. She says, "We're hanging in there. She has an inoperable vascular tumor in her brain, and they can't do anything about it." And then we entered into worship, and I looked back over my right shoulder, and in a sea of women, I could see one that worshiped God with a purity that I don't see every day. And I think about the times that I will sit out here and I won't raise my hands, and I'll be so consumed with the cares and the worries of this life that I can't get past myself because of what could possibly happen in my life next week. And then I see this young lady that is in a position, and her hands are raised to the God that controls the weather. And she said, "God, I'm here today, and that's enough. God, I trust you. God, I love you. I'm not there. I'm worried about things that I can't control. I'm consumed with the forecast. But guys, if we could but trust God, if we could stay close to him, man, the fruit of his Spirit in our life, it's joy, it's peace, the good kind. The kind that you can't get from anywhere else, that surpasses all understanding. He'll blanket you with it, cover you. Oh my gosh. We have to be near him. We have to stay tuned in. We have to trust him. We have to begin to take the lies of the enemy to our God immediately. And he will counter them with his word. You did this. You messed up here. Yet his word says that he has taken our sins and cast them as far as the east is from the west. He's ready to bring healing and life. He'll counter it. He'll tell you the truth as soon as you go to him. And then you have to trust him. and you have to allow him to move and be God in your life. Can't worry about the weather. We have to trust the God that, as Pastor Jonathan shared earlier, still controls the wind and the waves. If God has spoken something to you through a Rise conference, through messages here at the church, if he has given you something that he spoke to the core of who you are, as I'm telling you, it doesn't matter what the enemy says may or may not happen. God will bring that to pass if you trust him. He's been faithful. He saved you. He'll always be there.
Again, thanks so much for tuning in today. We hope that you've enjoyed this message and that you felt the presence of God right where you are. If you did enjoy it, we'd love to see you live at one of our campuses. Mount Hope meets at 9, 11, and 5, and Summersville meets at 11. We'll see you there.